Hi, we're just doing another video about it's the last day of the season now, so we're just going to summarize what's happened during the close season and what we plan to do going into next season, um, and I guess the how the last matches of our season played out. So I guess we can just quickly look how we ended up doing this season. So we won our league pretty comfortably, but very comfortably. And we did really well against AI matches. We pretty much we won. I think we had 19 wins, a draw, and 2 losses versus AI. So we did really well. It was versus the AI where we've easily won this league. And I've had some comments about it, saying that yeah, but your team was just a really good team, and you just won regardless, and it had nothing to do with playing AI. But that's definitely not true. Our starting squad was actually really bad, and there was a video that covered the starting squad. Went through every single one of the players, clicking on them individually, and you will see that the starting squad was actually really bad. But just to, I guess, make it a little bit more obvious how bad it was, our initial squad, if you look when we start playing our league matches, so we literally bought the guy that we absolutely needed to buy. We needed to buy a couple of players, and we bought the this guy. Just going to clear our lineup for now to not distract us. We bought this guy here, and you can click on him just to see. So this was, we needed, in the first video we said we absolutely needed to buy a playmaking midfielder, otherwise we wouldn't be able to compete. And we had all of the tools, but we were missing that key midfielder, and we also needed a couple other more role type players. And actually, if we look in our results, before we had this guy, we literally got that guy just before we played our first league game, and it wasn't coincident. It wasn't a coincidence. We had intentionally not been playing our league matches until we got that guy, and we managed to put it off. We signed that guy, and like literally 5 minutes later, this other user who had the rights to play the match started the match against us. So that was quite lucky that we had that guy. And as you can see, before we had him, we had lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had lost 7 matches in a row. And then we got the guy that we said that we absolutely needed, and our team would be extremely competitive if we got that guy. And all of a sudden, you know, we're winning to like 1, 2, 3, is it 7 of our first 8 matches we won in the league. So starting squad really poor, but we were missing a couple of key tools in order to compete. We picked them up, and then we've gone from losing 7 matches in a row before starting our league, and then ended up finishing our league with this record. And there was, in the first 2 videos, it covers exactly all of the assessment that was done to have achieved this. And then there's also some videos about, a few videos about playing against offline users and how to give yourself a win result a much higher percentage of the time than you would otherwise normally get. So moving on from that, and just quickly covering what's happened during the close season. So we've sold 2 players during the close season, and they will be leaving. So it's this guy and this guy. They were both key bench players for us, which isn't undermining them or an understatement here. Having substitutes that can come on and consistently make a big impact in matches is a really important thing to have, and both of these guys did that for us. As you can see, both substitute players, both averaging over 7, which is a pretty good indication that they were having such an impact in matches. And we had a lot of players set to auto accept, and we had sold these two. So this, you can check in our sales. So we had sold them for this guy for 350,000. So we'd actually only bought him during the season. He did well in the 12 matches. We had him speculatively transfer listed. We bought him for 95 grand. We had him speculatively transfer listed for 350 grand. And we sold him. So Dunn will just have to move on. It'll be possible for us to pick up another similar type older player for probably around 100 grand again. So that's just making a bit of money. This guy, we got 750 grand for him in the end, so that's a really good price for a player that has 6 endurance and 2 natural fitness. He'd never be able to start. He's a pretty handy player, but for that amount of money, we got a really good deal, I think. So just going through the rest of our squad here, we can sort of buy reputation. We don't have. We obviously will end up in the Division 1 for our FA. We'll get a Division 1 placement because we won the league. I think we are going to wait until the first day or two of the season to see how it all pans out in the transfer market in regards to whether we are going to decide to try and compete and finish as high in that league as possible, or whether we will plan more for the future and just build a team that will avoid getting relegated. And to do the latter, I think we probably already have a team that isn't going to get relegated, so we don't actually need to buy anybody to do that. But to be able to challenge at the top of the league, we probably would need to spend quite a big amount of money. We would probably need 2 key players, I believe, and we can cover why and who they are. Certainly at least 1 big player, but probably 2 if we realistically wanted to try to compete to win the league next season, I think. Let's quickly go through how the players that we've covered who we're losing. Let's cover who we've got coming in, and then we can compare that to the other players that we've got. The other guy who's leaving is this player. We've released him from contract because he was our 3rd choice keeper, and the reason why we've released him is because we've got 2 keepers coming in. Actually, we've got 2 in the squad that we're happy with, and we've got 2 more coming in. One that we're happy with to use now, and one that is a youth player signed for the future, potentially for the future. So let's just cover who we've got coming in. We've picked up quite a few players, as you can see here. Let's cover the senior players first. So we've got this guy coming in. We paid 250 grand for him. We actually only have in our squad at the moment 2 players who can play in advance of midfield, and we we lost our last match here against a very lowly placed side because our striker was suspended for that match, and we only had 1 attacking player in our entire squad, and that was probably the reason why we may have obviously lost anyway, but we got unlucky at the start. We went down and there was basically nothing that we could do to be more attacking to try to turn the match around in any way. So we were really undone because we had an imbalanced squad. The reason why we ended up with the imbalanced squad is because we had already comfortably won the league anyway, so it was more important to not waste money on the wrong player. Out of desperation, we were holding out. We never got the right guy, so by the time the transfer deadline come around, we'd already won the league. So that's why we ended up with an imbalanced squad. But this guy will help balance our squad out. So our striker, I think he could be played as a central midfielder, but we bought him with the intention to play him as a striker. He plays well into our creative short passing style tactic, but we're not 100% sure that will be our primary tactic next season, but it will certainly be our secondary tactic, if not our primary. So it's still important that he's very creative. and he's got good finishing and composure and off the ball and decent technique and long shots. So, I mean, he's obviously done really bad for his current owner. But if you look through his match log, even though he's had 20 starts, you can see that frequently he's being subbed off. I mean, at half time basically. So, and then when he is playing a whole match, wherever that may be, he's been playing it in holding midfield. So it's kind of like, well, maybe 5 goals in if half of these matches were holding midfield, and the other half were as a striker, but always subbed off at half time. You're kind of saying, well, he's only played like 5 or 6, something like that, full games up front, and actually, then 5 goals is a pretty good goal scoring record if you've only played 500 minutes or something like that of football as a striker. So I'm not sure. It's a low average rating as well. So hopefully we'll get. I'm confident we're going to get a lot more out of him than what this user got. He may not dominate for us, but we'll definitely get more out of this player. He's got nice endurance as well, which is good for us because our only other striker has ridiculously low endurance. So we might end up still playing one up front, starting this guy and swapping them over potentially with consistently with between half time and 30 odd minutes left in the match. Potentially we might end up starting both of them. It really depends on if we just go in with our current squad and playing to avoid relegation. I imagine we'll just start both of them. If we end up buying another couple of big players, then we might end up starting this guy and swapping them consistently over for our other guy. We'll see how that goes, but I think the reason why we've got this guy for this price, despite his attributes, probably is the fact that he's had such a poor season for his current owner, and people may have overlooked him. So be quicker about the other guys. So I'll just explain this one in detail, because for us this was essentially our big purchase. And then we've picked up 2 other senior players. So one is the keeper. He's quite different to the keeper that we've started this season, but I think if you had to rate them out of 10 basically, they would both end up with the same score out of 10. They'd both be a 6 out of 10 keeper-ish, something like that. So 6 or 7 out of 10. So they're both really nice keepers. It's the type of thing where we probably need to actually use both of them to understand which one is the one that we should be starting with. But all in all, for 100 grand, he's only 26. He's got high determination. He probably still has scope to improve. He's got nice attributes. I felt this was a good purchase for 100 grand. And we also picked up a player for nothing, only 21, and then as a centre half, 15 marking, 15 tackling, 17 jumping, got some pace, pretty decent mentals for a 21-year-old, and he's he's nice basically. I felt this was a good pickup for free, and he will play a role for sure. I'm sure I'm not sure if he's going to be a starter for us, but he'll certainly have an important first team role for our team this season. I'm absolutely sure of it. I think this is a nice looking player. The determination isn't, well, it's obviously only 11, so it's not great, but it's like, well, he's already 21. I mean, we brought this guy in not for the future. We brought him in because he can do a job for us right now, and if he improves any more, then he might be able to continue doing a job for us in the future. And he's also got some key attributes here that will hit people's search filters when they're looking for a player. Because he's young and he's going to hit the filters, there's a good chance that we could probably list this guy for a nice transfer fee over $500,000, and somebody may trigger that and buy him. So we might have just made $500,000 out of nothing potentially by signing this guy, and if we don't, we've got a very useful player for our team. I was really surprised we got him for nothing. And then we've got a bunch of youth players. I'll quickly go through these just to explain. So what we're looking for with youth players generally, key rule, high determination, because this is the key thing that's going to influence their development. at least in regards to when you're looking at the player to make a decision to buy them, the determination is the one key thing that you can look at and you can say that's going to have an impact on how this player develops. The natural fitness also has an impact as well. The determination much more important, particularly in the initial years, but natural fitness shouldn't be understated either. It has a pretty big impact, but it's much more like over the long term that you're going to see this. If all you really care about is the results that's going to happen in the first sort of 4 or 5 seasons that you have the player, the determination is the main one. Natural fitness still has an impact during those early seasons though, but in the latter seasons it's much more important in regards to slowing attribute degradation and things like that over time. So, but determination, key thing, natural fitness is secondary thing you want to look at, and then obviously aside from that you just want to look at the attributes, all the rest of the attributes and how they make sense together as a combination, and the positions that the player starts with and how it all ties in as a collective set of information that makes sense for that player. Obviously in regards to development, there's other things that can have an influence over it, if you're playing them, how well they're playing, things like that, but if you're just solely focusing on the attributes, they're the ones that you care about. So I pretty much will only ever sign youth players with very high determination. The only real exception to that are players that have good determination, that have exceptional sets of starting attributes, whereby they could make decent progress over time and be really nice players. Whereas if a player doesn't have attributes so high and you're looking at them and you're like, okay, these need to improve a lot in order for the player to be good, if that's the case, and that's almost always going to be the case, then they're always looking for the high determination and pretty much always very nice looking natural fitness as well. So this player, I think he cost, let's double check, 150 grand. So for 150 grand, it's got the determination, natural fitness, defender, has the tackling, so jumping, pace, decent marking. Overall, he's got the key attributes, reading a game, he's got the key attributes that he needs for his position, he's got the determination, and he's got the natural fitness. He's quite a way short of where he'd need to be obviously a starting player, but he's got the tools. There's a good chance that this player will turn into a nice defender. There's a good chance. Not guaranteed, he needs to develop, but there's a good chance. Obviously you factoring all of this in, so it's 150 grand, so you could be saying something like, well, there's a 10% chance he's going to turn into a world-class player and be worth millions. There's a 50% chance that he's going to turn into an average player that could be off the bench and he's only worth 100 grand, and there's a 40% chance he's going to end up worth nothing. So you work all of that out and you say, okay, well, it was easily worth 150 grand basically in this example. Don't know if the odds work out exactly like that, but I think basically when you in a cost-benefit analysis, this guy was worth this money. Next player, we picked him up for 40 grand. Now we wouldn't have picked this player up if we hadn't known we were going to get as many youth players as we did in the end. We got this guy early. He's got 20 in determination, great. Only 4 in natural fitness, horrid. We wouldn't normally go for a guy like that, but like I said, he was the second one we picked up at the very beginning of the close season. It was looking like it was going to be really difficult to get some youth players, and we wanted to have at least a few because we had squad shortages. We were just desperate to buy any old players the whole season just to have enough players to field a team. We didn't want to be in that position again. I thought it was better to have a few youth players that are there, so when we sell players, we're not in a big rush just to have to buy a player to be able to field a team. We could have those youth players there to come on, sit on the bench, and wouldn't have to play much of a role, but it would have eased that stress and rushing to have to buy players we didn't necessarily need. So that's why I got him. But that aside, he's got decent dribbling, finishing, some of these attributes okay. He's got a lot of really low ones, but he's got 20 in determination. If this natural fitness was a lot higher, he'd be a lot nicer, but we probably also wouldn't have got him for 40 grand. I don't expect this guy will turn into much, to be honest. But we've only have an outlay of 40 grand, and plus he would get paid 1k a day, so it's like 40 grand plus 30k a season. And I expect we could probably just transfer list him for a low amount, like 100 grand or something, and there's a chance that we'd just sell him anyway, I think, and make a little bit of money. So Like I said, would not have signed this guy if we had known that we would get all the rest of the guys, so just keep that in mind. Next player. 380 grand, so he's a bit more expensive, but comparatively, I mean, just looking at this guy for a second, 19 determination, 17 natural fitness, really, really nice. 15 finishing for a youth player. 15. I mean, there's scope that this could become 20. Yeah, not guaranteed, obviously. It might only end up 16 or 17, but it could potentially become 20. Really high composure off the ball. There's possibility space here that this guy could end up with 20 in finishing, 20 in composure, 20 in off the ball. I mean, it won't happen, but it's possible. If they all ended up in the 17 to 19 range, really nice player, a bit of pace, and the technique could potentially end up pretty decent here as well. And he's got a couple of decent creative type attributes, the vision and the flair. I mean, his mentals are pretty nice for his age. This guy, I'm kind of excited about. He could become something, and he might even be a useful player for us, especially if we're going down the let's build a team to not get relegated road. He could have some matches off the bench as well. If we had this guy in the season that we've just played, I think he would have started a few matches and played at least 20, had at least 20 appearances off the bench. He would have played a huge role for us if we had him this season. Next player. He's bought as a goalkeeper for the future. I mean, high determination, high natural fitness. He's got a lot of really low attributes, so he would need to make really good development, but he's got the determination and the natural fitness, so there's a chance that he could make it. And he's got he's got nice catching and decent reflexes and decent jumping, so he's got sort of good scores in the absolute key things. And he's got high determination and natural fitness. He would need to make a lot of progress to ever be a starting keeper, and you wouldn't want to develop spend all this time developing a 15-year-old player to become a reserve keeper. So I've only bought him because of the possibility that he could potentially start for us one day. He has a lot of progress to make, but what I can do is I can just track his progress in the next season or two, see how these attributes move, and see if they're moving at the rate that's needed, basically, for him to actually become a good quality starting keeper. So we'll do that, and we'll keep tabs on this guy. Right now, he's our 4th choice keeper, so he's not going to ever play for us. 110 grand, 30 grand a season, so it's a bit of an investment there. This one arguably wasn't worth it, but we're not talking about a huge amount of money. If we make a bad judgment call here, we just have to cut those losses, 170 grand or whatever it is. Next player, 100 grand, 20 determination, 14 natural fitness, nice, and then he's got some decent physicals, and I mean these technicals all really, I mean there's possibility with these that all of these ones down here could all end up high teens, not the long shots, but these ones all high teens, and he's got the potential to turn into quite a handy sort of defensive type midfielder. I mean, I don't mean defensive midfielder, I mean a midfielder who's a little bit more defensive than attacking in nature, but a good creative one that can defend. Not so much a great goal scorer. He could turn into a really nice player, and I felt for 100 grand that was a very good price for this player. And potentially, if we get some injuries and suspensions and whatnot, this guy could actually make a few appearances off the bench for us next season. Even I think it's a possibility. Next player, 1 grand. I was very surprised we picked this player up for 1 grand because 17 determination, 17 natural fitness, ridiculously awesome physical attributes for a 15-year-old, and 12 marking, 14 tackling, and lots of 5 and 6, and they don't sound too high, but there's a big difference basically between having 5 in passing and 1 in passing at the start, because this passing could potentially become 10 or 11 when he develops, whereas if it starts at 1, it's only going to become 5 or 6. And if you imagine that sort of crossing ends up around 10, the heading ends up 10, 11, passing 10, 11, and these higher ones all end up mid-teens, with these physicals, this guy could be a monster, basically. He could be awesome. So he has scope, and he's got the determination, the natural fitness to potentially make huge leaps and bounds in his progression. This guy could be really, really nice player, and he's very versatile, which is good for us now because tying back to the conversation with the other guy as well, if we had this player in the season we've just played, this guy, he would have started 5 or 6 matches and he would have made 20 plus appearances off the bench. He would have had a big role, and in the coming season I'm sure this guy will have some kind of a role for us. Next player. Right, we picked this guy up. I didn't check the price. It was 110 again. 110 grand. Look at these technicals, with this determination, 19. Natural fitness a bit less this time, but 19 determination. These technicals, just imagine that all of these develop well. I mean, you're talking high teens in all of this band. And his mentals are just some of the highest you will ever see, basically, for a 15-year-old. These could all end up near 20. And then his physicals, all around 10, which means, you could get a few points on all these, basically. These could all end up near 20, and these could all end up mid to high teens. And this guy, if you imagine that, and that's completely, it's not only possible. The likely outcome for this guy is that all of these ones here end up really high. These all end up low teens, low to mid-teens. These all end up mid-teens, and these end up up near 20, and these end up mid-teens, basically. We're at 10 to mid-teens, and that's the likely outcome here. And if that happens, this guy will just be quality. He will be a really, really nice player as a wing-back. So you'd have to play that as a tactic, but I don't know whether we're probably not planning to play wing-backs this season. But in the future, we might. But if he ends up that player, he'll be worth way more than 110 grand, and that's likely what will happen to that guy. So we're very surprised that we were able to get that guy. Next player, 15 determination, 13 natural fitness, so a bit lower than the others. But you can see some really, for a defender, tackling, marking, and then he's sort of got the technique and the passing and the vision. So he's be a really nice defender for a passing style of football, which is what we're playing at the moment. There's a chance that if this guy doesn't develop well, that he will be no good. That's the same as all of them. This one is a bit more risky than the others. I think this guy's got some really low attributes that would need to make up quite some ground for him to be nice. But the thing is, the key attributes, the ones that you really want him to have, are already really high. So if I think this guy could be nice. The decisions are worrying, but it's like, and the heading is a bit, but they're never going to have everything. If they had everything, there's no way that you would get them for 100 grand. So you have to bear that in mind. As an investment, I think he's a really solid investment as well. And then just with the, obviously, 15, there is a material difference basically between 15 and 20 determination. But 15 is still high enough. Especially if the natural fitness isn't really, really low. It's not high, but it's decent. There's scope that this guy, he certainly can progress quite well. He could be nice. He could be really nice. Next player. As you see, another defender. As you see, there's a running trend with having picked up lots of nice defenders because everybody wants attacking players. Everybody wants strikers. Nobody's looking for defenders. So it's much easier to pick up nice youth players that are defenders than it is to get the strikers and the attacking players. So that's why we've ended up with quite a few. We don't mind so much. There's not all of these guys were cheap, so not all of them are going to turn out to be good players. But but a few of them, we've got enough eggs in our basket here that a few of them are going to hatch for us, basically. So this guy, 20 determination, 15 natural fitness, that's a really sort of good combination that you're looking for. He, physically, the guy is a monster. Technically, pretty bad. Overall, pretty low, below average for sure, but they're all kind of, not the long shots, but all the rest of them, the passing, but the rest of them are up sort of near that 10 range, and if they progress well, technically he could become a very, he could become a technically adept player, and he's got the 11 in marking and tackling, so not quite as high as some of these other guys, but still not shabby at all. If they progress well with these physicals and some work with these mentals sort of developing well, he could be nice, but this guy certainly needs to make quite a bit of progress. He needs the mentals and the technicals to progress a lot, but they've taken the risk on this guy because physically the guy is he's just a complete monster, and the mentals have sort of huge scope to progress, especially over the entire span of a player's career, because a lot of these mental attributes, they keep progressing even well into a player's 30s. So they have huge scope to make massive leaps and bounds. The technicals, a lot of these develop for quite a few, like into players mid to late 20s. A lot of these. So there's a lot of scope that these can improve. But the physicals, they're quite limited in scope. Most of the physical attributes, they're not ever gonna. They'll improve. Most of them not that much though. So if you get a player with lots of low physicals, he's never gonna be physically great. So it's worth keeping in mind that technicals and mental attributes, to a degree, you can take a risk on that they might turn out great, but a player who's got like 5 in pace is never ever going to be quick. A player who has like 5 in off the ball, he might end up with decent, over time he could end up with pretty sort of, not going to end up with 20, but he could end up with over 10 in off the ball. A player with 5 in pace is never going to end up with 10 or low teens in pace. It's just not going to happen. So we've taken a chance on this guy because of the physical attributes, because they're the ones that essentially there's no point to take a risk on them, because that risk is never going to pay off, whereas you can take a risk with the mentals and technicals. So that's why we've taken a chance on that guy. 100 grand again. Last guy, 380 grand, 14 in determination, so lowest out of all the ones we've discussed, but 17 in natural fitness, so to a degree that compensates for, in my mind, for 1 or 2 points in the determination, but really nice. I mean, like we just finished the conversation about how important it is to start with the type of physical attributes that you would like to see in the end, and this guy has them. And then, technically for where he plays, 14 in finishing, wow, and decent composure and off the ball. And as we discussed, the mentals have huge scope to progress over time, and then. He's got nice long shots as well. So this guy potentially he could turn into a great player. And actually, right now, with these physicals and the fact that he's got key attributes for position, this guy would have started, I think, for our team in the season that we've just played. Or if not, he would have been like, right up there in one of the first players to get onto the starting team when a player was injured, and he certainly would have played a bunch of matches off the bench if we had him. This guy is higher in regards to the coming season. I think he's better than the other nice attacking player that we paid the same price for. This guy here is better, basically. I think for the current season coming, he's better than this player. And even though you sort of, I guess, overall technically and mentally, you could say they're pretty similar, physically the other guy is just way better, way better. So, don't get me wrong though. I'm not saying that the other one's going to develop into a better player. I'm talking about very specifically for the coming season. I have more confidence that in the longer term, this guy will be nice. The higher determination, I think, will be key to that. We'll see though. I think overall, when you look at the investment that we've made, 3, 760, 860, 960. It's less than 1.5 million that we paid for all those youth players. And we got 1.1 million just for selling 2 bench players, one of which was 32 or 32. So we basically sold a couple players and bought all of those youth players with the money, and paid a little bit extra to get them. But the point here is that we didn't pay a lot of money for these players. All in all, when you look at the total number, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got 10 youth players at about 1.5 million. So we paid an average of 150 grand each. Importantly, none of them were materially over 300, because in the 300 range, if you pay or less, they will be on 1k wages. They'll be on the minimum possible wage, so you'll be paying them 30 grand a season. Whereas if you pay more money than that, you end up paying more wages. And that can end up, it doesn't sound like much, one grand a day or 2 grand a day, but we're talking about 10 players here. So if the difference between us paying all of them 1 grand a day or 2 grand a day is 300 grand a season difference, and in upkeep. And realistically, for these players to become anything, you've got to have them for at least sort of 5 seasons, surely. So that's 300 grand a season for 5 seasons. That's £1.5 million difference. So even though it doesn't sound like much, it obviously adds up over time. So it's just worth bearing in mind that as long as you sort of not paying, if you're paying, it's high 300s. I think pretty much always should be guaranteed. If you pay less than 400, basically, then they'll always end up on the minimum wage. These youth players. That's worth bearing in mind. So that's who we brought in, and our squad. Where are we left? Where are we left with this? So we've sold some more players since we last. We sold this guy and this guy, which we've discussed. We can sort by average rating, and we can. It's a bit of an indicator, obviously. It's a good indicator for how well these players have performed for us. We've released this guy. This guy, he's going to be released as soon as the next season starts. Can't release a player when there's less than 24 hours in the season, so we're going to release him. Basically, the reason for that is that there are currently youth players that are about to become free agents that are better than him, so nobody's going to buy him, so we might as well just get him off the books. And all the youth players we've bought are way better than him as well, so we're going to lose him. This player, I don't know. I don't know if he's worth keeping around. I mean, he doesn't look that bad, but we'll see. We'll see. We might release him. I'll make a decision on that at the beginning of next season. There's no real. It's 1 grand a day we're paying him. It's not a big deal. If there's any chance whatsoever that we could actually sell him for anything, we might as well take that chance. This player, same deal. Not in a hurry to sell him. I think, not in a hurry to have to sort of just free transfer him to save a couple grand. But I think realistically, nobody's going to buy this guy because of his determination, and he's not awesome at all. But we'll hold on to him probably, because if we do end up playing wing backs, which I don't think we will, but if we did, and that would be facilitated because we might potentially buy a really awesome player who happens to be a wing back next season. And if we did that, then we might want to consider playing wing backs. And if that was the case, we might want to consider holding on to this guy as backup, because he actually is a pretty handy backup wing back. So we might just hold on to him for a few days before making a decision. This guy, hopefully somebody will pay the 100 grand for this guy. All in all, he's only slightly better than a couple of the 15-year-old defenders that we've just picked up. So it might be tricky to sell this guy, because he's not that much better than the 15-year-olds, but he's a little bit. So we might do so. And I'm sure all the vast majority of the good ones have been picked up by users. When we get to next season, if anybody wants a youth player, they probably have to wait until the end of the season. So a lot of people are impatient and they never want to wait for anything in life, and that includes signing players. So we might get lucky and sell this guy. I think that until we sell him, he might be slightly better than some of these youth players and be better on the bench for us. But he's got really low endurance. We'll never start him. Really, we just want someone to pay of 100 grand and just lose that guy. And I think somebody, unlike the other guys that we've just covered, there's a good chance that nobody is going to bid anything for them. This guy, probably somebody will eventually bid for him. Next player, he's got a really low average rating for us, 6.55, but I think he got a red card and a 4, so that hurt. And he got that red card wasn't for us, and I don't know, he just felt like he should be better than that. The red card obviously hurt, but even without it, he averaged below 7, and it just felt like he's a better player than that. He's a bit slow, and he's very slow. But just mentally and technically, he's so good. I'm prepared to keep persisting with this guy in the next season. I'm sure he will come good for us. Basically, he'll have a good season. And like, even though he's a bit slow, so he's ideally doesn't play right back. Ideally, this guy plays holding midfielder, but he could play central midfielder, and he could, if needed, fill in at right back, and in absolute desperation, centre back, but he's slow and can't jump. So, but really, we want to be playing this guy in midfield. And in the season just past, we have been playing him in holding midfield. That's primarily where we've used him, and a bit in right back. You can we got a bit desperate and had to use him all over the place, to be honest. But we wanted to play him in holding midfield. So hopefully we can achieve that. Central midfield, he'd be fine as well. Happily to play him in central midfield. Next player, I think this guy, hopefully, he's not quite good enough for us to want to be starting him. Last season we said we're pretty sure we'd start him all season, but eventually we would get the players that we want, and he would end up being a squad player and a bench for us. So let's see if that happens. Ideally, this guy ends up our backup versatile defender for the coming season. This player, he really disappointed. He underperformed for us. Again, I think he's got a red card for us at some point, which has brought his average rating down. But in saying that, even without it, he still would have averaged way below 7. He has nice goal-scoring attributes for a central midfielder. So we're very disappointed the fact that he only got... Well, not very disappointed, slightly disappointed that he only got 3 goals. But the thing that we were really disappointed about is that he's got 18 in passing, and he sort of got some other really nice creative attributes, sort of dribbling and flair and stuff. And he only got one assist for us. That was really disappointing. We thought that this player would be a lot better, a lot bigger player, and I think it might be because he's just too slow. We thought that the level of competition was inferior enough that this would get away with this lack of pace through the team. Maybe that isn't the case, and we should not be using so many slow players. And we'll look to sell this guy. Hopefully somebody will probably lower this auto accept amount. This guy just disappointed, and he's got a lot of really nice looking attributes. We should be able to sell this guy next season. Until we do, though, I think we don't want to be starting this guy, but he's clearly good enough that you're happy to have him around as backup. So we can sort of try to hold out for a good price for him. Next player, we said that we were slightly disappointed with his overall level of performance, but he ended up playing a bit better in the final, as you can see, 7.7, 8, 7.7. So we ended up picking up his average rating a bit. It was below 6.6, it was 6.5 something, and then he's bumped it up to that, and all of a sudden it's looking quite decent. And we will probably start this guy next season. We'll probably persist with him just because his attributes are so nice and he's so versatile. He'll start probably for us again in the coming season. We'll still have him transfer listed for $500,000. He's underperformed slightly from what we'd hoped. So if somebody wants to pay the $500,000, they can have him. But until they do, we're just going to keep starting this guy. This player we brought in, we got him. He was at odds in regards to like 18 finishing for a defender kind of thing, and he's got some odd attributes. He's like the best attacking defender ever, but he's like really slow. Going back to that point, I think we ended up with too many slow players. This guy particularly, he sort of did a job. We transfer list him speculatively. It's a good chance we won't sell him because of the fact that he's got odd attribute spread. He won't be hitting people's search filters, and he's slow. But in saying all of that, he's played decent for us in the season just past. So we could try and sell him, but I wouldn't want to just release this guy from his contract. He's too valuable to us. Probably don't want to be in a position that we're starting him in the current season. But we're happy to have him around as backup for the first team, and hopefully we can try and sell him for some money. This was our keeper that we bought with the intention to become our third choice keeper, and he will be our third choice keeper in the coming season. He's actually played some matches for us, and he's done really well. 6.78 is actually a pretty nice average rating for a goalkeeper. And actually, I think we never lost a match, any of those matches. Yeah, all the matches that he played in, we didn't lose any of them. So he did a nice job for us. High determination, high natural fitness, and quite solid attributes. If he continues to progress well, he could easily be a really nice starting keeper in the future. Next player, this guy was like the guy who's just sort of average. If you want to talk about sort of defending as a concept and creating goals as a concept and scoring goals as a concept, which is a key thing to break down really as a squad, because you want to be able to do all of those things. You want to potentially do things more granularly and work it out like that, but you should always at least look at that at a basic level. Can my team defend? Can my team score goals? And can it create the chances to score the goals? And those last two things are work. I mean, all three things are important, but particularly the creating and the scoring of goals. You want to get the balance right. You want to make sure that you can score goals, but there's no point to have a whole bunch of goal scorers. You need some players who can actually create the chances for those players, and there's no point in having a whole team full of players that can create chances, nobody that can score. And it's all about getting the balance right there. But it's completely separate to all of that. You obviously need to have enough players that can defend, otherwise you're just going to lose, basically, no matter how many goals you score. So you want your defenders to obviously be able to defend and hopefully contribute and maybe chip in with some goals and assists. But on the same note, you want to be thinking it around the other way as well. You want your midfielders, and maybe to a much lesser degree your attackers, to also be able to chip in with defending. So this guy, he can defend like not well, but he sort of pulls his own weight defensively. He's decent. He's decent at creating chances, and he's decent at scoring goals. And he played decent for us this season. I think ideally we're in the same position that we were in. It's a bit changed for us in the season we just played. We said we'd happily and thought we probably would start this guy in central midfield all season, which we have done. In the coming season, we probably want this guy to be our backup central midfielder. We ideally want to be fielding somebody stronger than this in our starting team. Sold this guy. This guy, really nice creative attributes. He will become our impact sub next season. He's too weak defensively, and not great enough to compensate for that. He can probably fill in as a starter in case of injuries, but all in all, we want this guy to be an impact sub when we need to create more chances in matches. I'm not comfortable with starting this guy for how weak he is defensively, and I'm just not impressed enough with him in regards to his sort of, he's got nice, creative, and even decent goal scoring attributes, but I'm just I don't think he's good enough to compensate for the fact that he can't defend. but that's fine as a substitute. When you need a goal, you need a goal. Bring him on. Hopefully he helps that happen. This guy's our creative defender. I'm really not sure if we're going to be able to play such a creative football in the coming season. So if we can't, then he'll become a lot weaker as a player. But I still think he'll be a really nice, solid defender regardless, and he'll start for us regardless. He played really well this season, and the endurance is key. Physical's obviously really low. We've covered this guy in the other videos. I think he will, as to how we needed to play to get the most out of him, and when we did that in the season just played, I'm not entirely sure we'll be able to do that in the coming season. This player here will start without any shadow of a doubt for us, and I'm hoping that he can play central midfield for us in the coming season. He, talking about scoring goals, talking about creating goals, and talking about defending, this guy is just awesome at all three of those things. And he played holding midfield for us in the season just past. He still chipped in with 8 goals and 11 assists. I mean, he's got older and he's declining a little bit in his attributes. But I believe even with that decline and even with the higher level of competition, if we pushed him up into midfield, that we might, we probably could even get a bigger output from him in regards to goals and assists than what he's got in the season just finished. So we want to try and push him up. If we have to play him in holding midfield again, we have to do so. But hopefully we've got enough players now and the ability to buy some players that we might be able to make that possible, that he can play central midfield. This guy, he will definitely start for us probably in one of these 3 positions. At the moment we have no right wingers anyway, so at the moment it's nailed on to be this position, which is where he's played entirely in the coming season, except for the very last match because our striker was suspended, so he had to be pushed to play striker. 22 goals and 8 assists. He did really, really, really well, and he's certainly good enough to start again, and we want to be starting him. He'll be a key player for us in the coming season. This guy, I think, with his age and his low endurance, we got away with that to a degree in the season just played because our team was just very good compared to the overall level of competition, but that won't be the case next season. I think this player's shortcomings, his endurance, is going to be brought to the fore next season, and he won't be anywhere near as good. But if that is the case, then he would still be an awesome substitute, a massive impact sub, and he could constantly just come on basically at half time or early second half every single match where you're just not winning comfortably, and he could just come on every time and give you he essentially would then be playing fresh against players who are tired, as opposed to him being the most tired player on the pitch all the time. And if he's the freshest player on the pitch with these attributes, he should be able to perform really well. So we'll make use of this guy no matter what. Just don't know 100% that he'll be able to start, but he probably will. Don't want to underplay it too much. He's a really nice player. If we can get our team to the right level, he probably could start still. And this player will play in central midfield again. 9 goals, 17 assists. He played really, really, really well, and he will be our best player again in the coming season, I'm pretty sure, unless we buy somebody who's better, but I think that's unlikely. So tactically, look, I've already worked it all out. So the players we've got coming in, the players that we've lost, and the players that we have remaining, I think our tactic is going to transform from this to be this instead. Because we picked up this other striker, so I can quickly basically fill out how I think pretty much know who we want to play where. So we got him there, striker that we played as a solo striker all season, and then with him the other older guy that we've just bought. He'll play the other striker berth. The guy that we played in the attacking midfielder position will continue to play that all season. We'll want to push. We don't have a defensive midfielder anymore, so this guy, which we wanted to push up into midfield, we will be able to. Our creative defender will continue to play defender, but we'll probably play a less creative style of football. We'll explain why that's the case afterwards. This guy we want to be an impact sub for us. These two guys we're selling. This guy, I know what's going to happen. We're going to say basically that we're going to start him with who we have at the beginning of the season, but this is essentially the player that we want to replace to improve our team. We want to buy another really classy central midfielder if we can, and that's who will bump out of the starting lineup when we do that. This guy will be our third choice keeper, and then we got this guy who ideally we would be using as backup. This guy who we're happy to start. But I'm not in any of those defensive places, so it depends how. Let's just plump in there for now. We have this guy who we're happy to play in central midfield. So what we would do is play some friendlies, and we'll test to see whether this guy or this guy should be occupying this midfield berth. This guy, to be clear, was the guy who's underperformed, but we were very confident that he would play much better in the coming season for us. So we definitely give him a chance to do that. So we'll test between these two guys. This guy is certainly a nice sort of option to have anyway, coming off the bench. But I think actually that it's probably will start. I honestly don't know how it will turn out, but I think there's probably slightly more chance we'll end up. So I'm confident that this guy will come good for us. Could be either of these, and like I said, we're looking for another player to replace him. This guy was our starting keeper this season. We're buying another keeper who's good, and again, we're going to test between the two of them to see who's best. Whichever one isn't is going to be the substitute keeper. This guy, none of these guys we basically anticipate playing any much of a role. This guy, as you can see already, that we're short here basically of defenders. This guy who we ideally want to end up becoming a backup, he's going to end up starting until we get some more players, that's clear. And I think the guy we put in right back, we're going to end up playing here. And until we sign somebody, which clearly we have to because we're very short here, this guy who's really not suited to right back will start playing there in the friendlies. And this guy will get that central midfield spot. But we definitely need something here. We've got a whole bunch of youth players coming in, some of which we'd be happy to have on the bench. But in regards to senior bench power that can actually do something, not much, right? So these guys, and this guy we probably would happily have on the bench over some of these youth players. So at the moment, we do have that. I've totally, sorry, that's missed the fact that we've got this really nice centre half coming in. So I forgot about that. I was wondering why it hasn't played out how I'd originally saw it. So yeah, so this centre half, what I originally said was correct. So this guy should be the right back. The guy that we've got coming in will play that position. We've got the defender that we've got for free coming in. He's going to play there. And this guy is going to start as the central midfielder there, and this we're going to test between these two. And then we've got the bench keeper coming in, and we're basically got one of those attacking sub, the guy with the 14 in determination. He's going to take that last bench spot. The two senior players we're signing are going to take these, and this goalkeeper we're signing is going to take that. So that's our these guys will probably just want to lose them all, and then our squad players become the rest of our 15-year-olds that we've just signed. So this is the team that we will be heading into. Now this team I don't think is going to be anywhere near good enough to win our league next season. So I think how we improve it, we're short here of we need an extremely good defender, I believe, and we need an extremely good midfielder. And if we got those two things, and then you look at our squad, then we have a little bit more depth, but importantly we have the extra quality in defense, which we're a little bit lacking at the moment. And then last season we just played this guy here, and in a lot of matches we even played we played two. So we played 6 midfielders quite often last season, and to a degree, that offsets. I mean, teams were able to exploit it, and we primarily used that when playing against offline opponents because they weren't able to react to exploit it. But we if we go from having 6 midfielders to 4 midfielders, then all of a sudden, you need more class. You need more class there if you want to be able to compete in the same way. Last season we dominated possession in matches, so we wouldn't be able to dominate possession with 4 players, but we could be seriously in trouble there possession-wise unless we have a lot of class through midfield. So we need, I feel, if we want to play this tactic and we want to be consistent in matches, consistently winning them, we need class. We need another really classy midfielder. And the defense particularly, because we dominated the possession, we weren't really exposed, but I think overall our defense is pretty weak. I think we need one big defender, not a defender who can score goals or create chances, but just a defender who's just really, really good at defending. Probably a centre half, I believe, because this guy is probably best suited to right back anyway. This guy can play anywhere, and this guy can only play left back, and we ideally wouldn't be using. So basically this guy could move to right back to where he should be playing. This guy could move to left back, get another centre half. But these guys are pretty versatile, so we can make it work no matter which position defender we get, I believe. Ideally it's a centre half though. A centre half and a central midfielder potentially could play this. So if the really classy midfielder that is available happens to be a defensive midfielder, then that'd be okay, I think, for us as well. So that's who we're going to be on the eye out for. If we can pick those two things up, I feel like we could challenge. We could be near the top 5 places in the league next season. So that's what we want to do. A lot of this will essentially be decided in, we'll have it at the date when our first fixture needs to be played for. We're going to assess the transfer market, see how that pans out, see if there's a possibility that we're going to actually be able to get these 2 players. As soon as it's clear that that's not the case, then we probably just want to go with the team that we've got to play our fixtures. And if that's what you want to do, then what you actually, if your intention isn't to improve your team, then what you want to do is you want to try and request your matches and play them as fast as possible, because other users probably aren't thinking about everything properly, and they might be thinking, oh, I'm going to play some league matches to see if my team's any good. Well, that's exactly when you want to be playing them. You want to be playing them when you've got the team that you know that you're going to use for the season, playing against another user who's just thinking to test some stuff out and throw away some league points. So you want to come bursting out of the gates and play your league matches as fast as possible. Conversely, if you know for a fact that you want to buy a couple of players, then you should hold out to the very last minute to try and get them before playing any league fixtures. So for us, we've said if we want to try and win the league, then we need those 2 players. But what we're going to do, we're going to go, as soon as the season starts, we're going to put down a bunch of offers. We're going to pay very close attention to the transfer market just for 1 or 2 days, and if it's kind of clear that nothing is happening for us, we're just going to abandon that altogether, go with what we got, and then try and play out as many early league matches as quickly as we can. However, if we get one of those 2 guys quickly, we're then going to hold out until we get the second one of them. So that's going to be our plan going into the season. We'll see how that pans out for us. Of course, we will be playing a lot of friendlies first regardless anyway, because we're not sure which of our 2 keepers we want to start, and we're not sure which of these 2 midfielders we want to start. Bearing in mind we're going to try and buy a midfielder, but if we're not going to end up buying one and we're going to go with what we have, we're not even sure out of who we would start out of what we have. Goalkeeper decision undecided, central midfielder position here undecided, and possibly, these positions will be completely set in stone. These positions will be completely set in stone. The defensive positions, however, potentially not. This guy potentially could break into our team, and potentially we have a different configuration because a lot of these guys are versatile. Um, in regards to the team instructions, I don't think we'll be playing this system anymore. I think we'll be playing it a lot safer. I think we'll be playing tactically very different from, depending on whether we're home or away and how good the opponents are. In away matches, we definitely will be playing our more favoured counter-attacking style system, and I believe we'll also play with lower closing down, because we really don't want, if we get players sent off at a higher when our components are better, then we will be punished results-wise. So we want to play a little bit safe, and we want to monitor these sliders as the match progresses. The reason why we had it highest in the current season is because our striker had so low endurance that he was basically useless in the latter parts of matches. So we had the closing down high so that our team generated more chances early in the match, and then we actually tailed it off as the match progressed. If we picked up the yellow cards, this time we want to do it a bit different. I think start a little. I mean, still quite high, just a bit more conservative, and then increase it more as the match progresses. Our favoured counter-attacking formation, a little bit defensive, a little bit direct. Might be a little bit more fluid, but I'm not sure. We'll just leave that. Generally speaking, with the sliders, what you want to do is just not just change things for the sakes of changing things. It's better to be clear and concise about what you want to do. If you want to be extremely defensive in a match, you're better off just to be extremely defensive. If you want to be extremely attacking, you're better off just to be that. If you want to play direct ball, just play direct. Just make it all the way direct. And the reason for that is because if you do it, it's a case of extremes, and if you're not sure, just put it in the middle. When you do things extreme like that, it's much easier to understand what difference it's making that you've done. If you're not sure whether playing direct or not is helping your team, just make it all the way direct, and you'll be able to see much more quickly from the feedback and the match stats and the commentary if that has helped you or not. Of course, over time, when you understand exactly what when you feel how your team plays, so to speak, and what they like, then you can be much more specific and make that a little bit less or whatever. And this is why I know this is my preferred counter-attacking formation, because of the feel that I'm talking about. But before you have that, you're better off just always being extreme. If you want to play direct, just play direct. If you want short passing style, do that. If you want to play defensive style, do that. If you want to play extremely fluid football, do it like this. And if you're changing it like that during matches, it'll be much easier to see what impact your changes are making. For us, I think we're going to play this type of system. We'll have to get a feel and friendlies to exactly where this one should be. This is definitely how we will play our away matches, and possibly our home matches against good teams, and our home matches against weaker opposition. We might try to do it like this, which is the style that we played in the season that we've just dominated the league. So I think tactically that's what we will do next season. Of course, we're going to test it in a lot of friendly matches. So there are our plans for the coming season, and that's the analysis of our squad. We've finished in the transfer market, so we can check our finances. So financially, we have, like we said, we spent a bit of money on youth players, and have got a few senior players. We sold some players. We got a net transfer spend here though of I think it's 700 grand or something. It's here actually. So our net transfer spend is 410 grand. And we got an upwards projection still. So financially we're pretty strong here, and the type of really classy players we want, we don't want to overspend. We don't want to overpay for them. So this amount of money is way more than enough to get them. We'd be thinking less than £2 million each. That's the top price range that I'm thinking about. So financially we're capable of getting them. It's just a case of getting the right players for the right price. We don't want to rush into anything here. We've got a great platform for our club financially going forwards. And then in the season coming, the youth players that will be introduced will be of a higher standard than the ones from the previous season. They continually to get better each season, at least for the coming seasons. That'll be the case. So it's worth bearing that in mind. That you know, having money left over for the end of the season to spend potentially on youth players is never a bad thing. So we keep that in mind. We're quite happy, obviously, with how the season has gone. We're happy with how our squad has turned out. We're happy with the youth purchases we've made. We're happy with our financial position. So all in all, we're very happy with how everything is going here. And I'm confident. I'm confident that if we get the players, that we will challenge right near the top of the table next season. And I'm also confident that even if we don't get anybody and we just have to go with what we've got right now, that we will comfortably avoid relegation. So however things turn out, we've got a plan and we'll be ready for it. Okay, thanks very much.